you join me for my interview series, Diversity and Inclusion in TV, Radio and Film. I've got an amazing guest for you today. She works in radio, but before I reveal who that is, I'd like to say that if you're new here and you really want to get a grasp of what this business is about, TV, radio and film, and you want to understand this industry's approach to diversity and inclusion, then start right now and hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you can keep up to date. Now, mental health awareness has increased in recent years, and this is going to be my focus in this episode. So my guest has got a lot to say about this, so I'm not going to hesitate anymore. Let me get straight to it and introduce her. She's got over a decade working in radio for the likes of Orion Media, Celador Radio Global, and she's currently a commercial scheduling executive at Bauer Media Group. Welcome, Debbie Dean. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Samina. Hi, everyone.
It's really good to have you. So, as I mentioned in your intro, you've got a lot to say about this. Why is that?
I do. So I was someone who, before I ended up getting a diagnosis, didn't really believe that mental health was much of a thing. It was, pardon the pun, all in your head. And then it all changed when I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and depression all in one go about 5 or 6 years ago.
And so prior to that, I'm sure you would have experienced having episodes or experiencing anxiety and depression. What did you put that down to then before the diagnosis? How were you managing?
So I would say the anxiety has been prevalent for most of my life. It's not something I ever remember being triggered by something. It was just something that was there, but I assumed it was something everyone had. Therefore, giving it a label, I didn't think it wasn't a real thing. That's just how everyone felt. That was normal. And then the depression was largely circumstantial. It took a life event to trigger that.
And so, after your diagnosis, how did that change things for you? What did that mean to be diagnosed?
At the time, there was definitely a roller coaster of emotions. In a way, there's something quite cathartic having a name for something you're going through. So it's a reason for why you're feeling a certain way, which is just it's a good thing to have, especially when you're aware that other people are going through the same thing. You're not alone. And it means that once you've made that step, you're able to get the help you need, or even just learn more about what you're going through.
Now, there's going to be some people out there who might not understand this condition and might dismiss it as, well, you're feeling a bit down. Everybody feels down. Everybody gets depressed. So could you, for the purposes of that, describe how your depression and anxiety manifest and what kind of impact it has on you, and particularly in the workspace?
Sure. So for me, I'll start with the anxiety. For me, it's like a day-to-day, well, not every day, luckily, but as a kind of mild level of anxiety, I experience a lot of irrational thoughts. My mind would often go to worst case scenario in every situation, which is not a pleasant way to live, but I guess in a way it kind of prepares you for the worst case scenario because you're always thinking of it. And then as for the depression, I always had it in my head until I experienced it for myself. In my head, depression was being sad. I'd seen it in films, I'd heard about it in songs, and it's just you just cry a bit and stay in bed, and that's what it is. But for me, there is an element of that. There are times when I am feeling a bit low, which everyone experiences. But for me, the worst part of the depression is when you feel nothing at all, when you're completely void of emotion, and that's the scariest bit.
And why is that scary?
when you've lost the ability to feel something, it's hard to see an end to it. When you're in a bad mood, or if you're feeling sad, you're aware that there are other times in your life where you've been happy. When you're completely void of emotion, there's this feeling that even if it only lasts for an hour or two, that when you're in that moment, it feels like that's it. That's your life now. That's how.
So it feels eternal in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that impact then, with your work? Because especially, well, as a combination, if you experience both these things together, I presume, and I'm presuming, it could be quite detrimental, a hindrance. So can you just share how does that play out in the workspace when you go through this?
So for the anxiety, for me, my biggest struggle in the workplace is if I make a mistake, my mind goes to, oh no, I'm going to get fired. Even if it's like the tiniest mistake, which everyone makes mistakes. But for me, I would really take that to heart, and that's a really hard thing for me to deal with. And it's something that I've been learning to deal with for a very long time. I remember in my very first job, my boss pulled me aside one day and asked me what was going on, why I was spending so long checking everything I'd done over and over again. And I have to get it right. And I remember he said to me, "You're not flying a plane." And that stuck with me. You're not flying a plane. No one's going to be harmed if you make a mistake in your job.
Oh, well, that's good advice, eh? Sound advice, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
And so over the years throughout your career, have all your workplaces been supportive? And if they haven't, where do you think the gaps are in our industry, in radio, in media, that can be filled to ensure that people feel it's a safe space to work and that they can actually speak up when they experience anything?
Okay, so as I mentioned before I had my diagnosis, and I didn't really believe in the whole mental health thing. Unfortunately, there are a lot of people who are still like that. It's so much better these days, and I've seen the change myself. My struggles have only been a handful of years. There are people who have, had a longer journey than me. But even in those 5 years, I've seen the changes happening. And earlier on in my diagnosis, when you are quite early on in it, when it's all new to you, and it's hard to navigate because you don't know what's going on with your brain. There's weird things happening that you don't like. They're not rational thoughts, and you don't know how to navigate them, and you don't know how to deal with when something is normal and when something's not. So if you spend a massive chunk of your life in work, it's going to manifest.
Yeah, I mean, we all spend most of our lives at work. So this is why, I'm so keen for you to share this, because it is going to be impactful.
Yeah. So I've definitely had my ups and downs in the workplace, and definitely earlier on when I was possibly more volatile with my mental health. I haven't always worked with people who were accepting of these things. There have been places that I've worked where it's not been accepted, and if I've needed the time to, whether it's recover from a panic attack or deal with whatever I'm going through that day, it's not always been welcomed. And there have been times when it's been suggested, oh, you need to do that in your personal time. That's you don't bring that to the office. That is something you leave at home.
Well, what I find quite insulting in that is, why would it's like you purposefully wouldn't do that. Who goes to work with the purpose of being disruptive or not being able to do their job? I mean, nobody purposefully goes out to do that. Or if they do, I tell you, it's going to be rare.
Exactly. At the end of the day, we are all human, and not everyone is having a great time. And I mean, the last year has been enough to prove that.
Yeah, with the pandemic, the backdrop of the pandemic, it's just been really challenging for everyone. So yeah, so in the work, so not everybody's been accepting of you. Were you able to speak up and challenge that?
Well, this depends on how you're feeling at the time. Like me today, I'm feeling quite strong, and I'm able to share my experiences and talk about mental health without worry of how other people are going to deal with it, because I'm kind of at that stage where I don't care, because this is me, and you accept me or you don't. But before, I guess I was more selective of how much I would share. But now I'm at the stage, I'm not scared of talking about the mental health, because I know I'm in a good environment where people are accepting of it. And that's not always the case. Not everyone is lucky enough to work in a place where they have the resources to help you, or even, the training to deal with, a coworker who's going through something.
Like you said, not everybody's going to be in a positive position like you are with a supportive employer. So what would you say to those who aren't? Because you've had previous experience of where you weren't supported. So with that in mind, and with hindsight, what would you say to somebody today who might be going through something like that?
One of the most powerful tools for me has been talking, whether that's, well, it's always good to seek professional help. And if your workplace has practice in place where you can talk to a mental health professional, or whether it's through, the NHS, or there's a bunch of charities out there who are able to help as well. So that would be the first point of call, to reach out to one of them. And it doesn't always, I used to get really scared of seeking professional help, because in my head I was like, if I tell them how I'm feeling, I'm going to be sectioned, or and it's not, because mental health can be a really isolating thing, and you feel completely on your own, and no one's going to understand how I feel. But the most valuable times I've had, like, sharing with people is when they've said, oh yeah, I get that, you're not on your own with that. And so there are people in these places, even if you don't have that where you work. Mental health affects, what is it, 1 in 5 of us, or it might even be more than that. There's going to be, you're going to know people who have struggled with mental health at some point. So chances are they're going to have an understanding, or at least some kind of compassion.
So find a support group or support network, or somebody to talk to outside of the workplace if you don't get the support in work. However, if that's still not conducive to an easy life at work, then what would you say? Because you have been in a similar situation.
Yes, I have. So something that I've learned, and has taken a long time to learn, is no job is worth your mental health. No, actually, there's nothing that's worth the cost of your mental health, because ultimately that is, if you've got some kind of physical ailment, you are still capable of enjoying daily life. I'm not going not to like write off, serious conditions or anything, but it's your emotions. It affects how you respond to each day. And if there is something in your day that is affecting that and taking that away from you, that's not a situation you want to be in. So there needs to be some kind of change, and that depends on how you're feeling, whether it's right to just completely leave that situation or actively seek to change that situation. I think the worst thing you can do is just stay and hope that stay and hope that it changes itself, because you never know, there might be someone else going through the same thing. And yes, like where I've worked in a company that wasn't so receptive to mental health, since leaving that company, I've spoken to other employees there who did experience the same thing as me and did have the strength to speak up, and change was made for the better.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, it is not within the law to discriminate. They have to make change to accommodate people. So, but I do understand the fear factor, especially if you're a first jobber. You know, you don't want to speak out. You're fearful that, I might not be accepted, or they're going to see me as a trouble causer, and so on. So I totally understand all that goes with it. But sometimes it does pay to be courageous, but it really depends on the individual. So now what I'd like to talk about is, because you're kind of giving back now in your current workspace at Bauer, do you want to share details of that? Like you're contributing now to helping others who might be experiencing something similar.
Yeah, sure. So when I started at Bauer, I've been at Bauer almost 3.5 years now. My mental health was really, really low when I started, and it almost felt, my first few weeks at Bauer, I felt like I wasn't me. I was acting. I was pretending to be someone who didn't have mental health issues. And when you try and do that for an extended period of time, it's
exhausting, right?
And it ended up that I had a breakdown in work. I couldn't keep up with it, and I had it in my head, I was still in my probation, and you don't want to put across this idea that maybe you're not going to be able to cope with the job. But then, yeah, it all came to a head, and I just had this breakdown in work, and I was so scared at how it would be received. I left the room. I think I went to the toilets and just had a cry, and I was just too scared to go back to my desk, because clearly everyone had seen me leave. But the way that it was dealt with was incredible. My manager was a man, so he couldn't come into the ladies' bathrooms, but he sent one of my colleagues in to check up on me, and then he sent me home for the rest of the day, which, again, at the time I was like, I've just been sent home from work. When I came in the next day, he called me into a meeting, and he had taken my situation so seriously, and it was so refreshing to see. He'd put in place things to make me feel better in work. He put me at ease that, mental health is like physical health. If you're not feeling well, you don't come into work. Or if you're not feeling up for being in the office, work from home if you can. And here are some people that you can talk to if you are struggling. The HR team, they have various resources as well. And he'd given me all these resources, and it was just so amazing to see. And you know what, just from that simple act, I don't think it changed so much that my recovery was a lot quicker, just knowing that I was in a place that was okay with who I am. So then a few months later, Bauer brought into place they started bringing in mental health first aiders, or rather they started training them up within the business. They sent an invite out to the company to see who was interested in doing it. I think they were starting in London, and I was so keen. I was so adamant I wanted to be on that team, because I was like, this is the most important thing I could do right now, apart from scheduling my adverts. But I never wanted anyone to feel how I had previously been made to feel in work. So I fought to be on that team. I mean, the poor woman in HR that kept emailing, can I please be on this team? It's really important. And I did. I got a place. I was one of the first 8 employees to be trained as a mental health first aider. And now I think there's over 60 of us now. It's grown. And I think the aim is to, I think the ultimate aim is to get 1 in 10 people trained. But it's been amazing, and it's we had external people come in and train us, and yeah, for me it's just so important, especially when people are working from home. I was saying, you know, when the pandemic hit last year, I was saying this to my colleagues, is when you're in the office and if someone's being a bit quiet or they look a bit upset, you notice because you sat next to them.
Yeah.
When you're working from home and you don't have people around you, it's hard to notice when people are struggling. So for me, it was really important to check in and remind people of the resources we had as a company.
That's really incredible. I love this story, and it's so great that you're giving back. And also there's a chain reaction going on, and it would be awesome if 1 in 10 could be trained, because then that's a real solid support network to which people can refer to, and there's no shame, there's no stigma. You can go speak to people.
Yeah, definitely. It's been a great program, and you know, some of the people that I've spoken to on a mental health first aid basis, you know what, we've got those resources there, but they're not always needed. Sometimes people just need someone to listen without judgment, and that's something we can do as well, and it really helps talking to people.
Yeah, no, do you know what, Debbie? I'm so grateful to you today for sharing your story. It has been incredible to really get a deeper insight into what you've experienced and what's gone on for you, and how you're in a workspace now which is super supportive. And I love that you're giving back as well. So I'm really grateful. Thank you so much for sharing your story today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for letting me share it.
No, you're very welcome. There you have it. Debbie Dean being so open, so generous, sharing her experience, struggling with anxiety and depression in the workplace. Now, if this interview with Debbie has resonated with you, if it's been of value to you, then please do hit the like button. I would really welcome your support. And also, if you think that somebody could benefit from this video, then please do feel free to share a link with whomever you think it might help. Also, I have great guests for you each week talking about different strands of diversity and inclusion. They're all industry professionals. They all share from their first-hand experiences. So to not miss out, do subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out. Of course, if you've got any thoughts, opinions on what was discussed today, or indeed if you've got your experiences that you would like to share with me in the workspace, whether that's with a physical disability or with anxiety or depression or whatever that might be, I would really love to hear your stories. Please do get in touch. Okay, that's it for today. So grateful that you joined me. Thank you so much. And I really look forward to catching up with you next time. See you then.